Hi, this is Privateer Station, and this morning we bring you day 619 of Russian war with Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Alexei Arestovych, Nikolay Feldman, Ukrainian journalist, and Yuriy Romanenko, co-founder of Ukrainian Institute for the Future. In today's stream, they address a growing divide, or what appears to be a growing divide between positions of General Zaluzhny, Commander-in-Chief, and Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine, Supreme Commander. Many of you are asking questions if Alexei is preparing his election campaign. It appears to be the fact. He is also extensively traveling this month, and I suspect he probably will travel for the next few months around the allies and different conferences, establishing more support for Ukraine. So there'll be another stream that we translate this week. There'll be more sharp questions to Alexei. I think you guys will appreciate that. There are a lot of interesting sides of his character that you will see in his positions that are usually not discussed in these streams. As always, special thanks go to Bill for his super thanks. Bill, you're doing an amazing job supporting our work. And from our members today, we want to say thank you to Dave Hopper and Daniel Smith. Thanks so much, guys. And with this, day 619. Enjoy. Good evening, everybody. This is Project Alpha. My name is Nikolay Feldman. You're watching a War Diary with Alexei Arestovych. Alexei is with us on the stream. Good evening. And according to our previous agreement in the last stream, we're doing another fundraiser, so I'm announcing it at the beginning. For the 53rd Brigade, the link is at the bottom, and the guys right now are exactly in Avdiivka, according to the data that we rechecked. And we're staying in contact with their points of contact, and they're gathering funds for 30 Mavics, 30 UAVs. For the front, you know how precious they are, so we will be supporting that fundraising during the whole stream. All right, Alexei. All right, so let's go to the news. Let's go on the facts. Commander-in-Chief Zaluzhny did not react to our stream, and I think that is a quiet confirmation of our interpretation being correct. And then President of Ukraine essentially came with contradicting statement in The Economist. And Zelensky doesn't think situation on the front is a stalemate. He thinks situations were much worse. And that's what he said in his statement to the Commission led by Ursula von der Leyen. It is not a stalemate. We are saving our troops. We do not throw them into the grinder. Nobody wants to do that. How do we win that? I would say we need F-16s. We need to wait a bit till the guys learn how to use it, and then we reinforce our front with air defense systems, and we'll see how it changes the situation. And let's remind that Zaluzhny's framework for F-16's effectivity is 2 years. So we need to wait for 2 years. Alexei, am I getting anything wrong from this framework, as I described it? Nikolay, we found ourselves in a very uncomfortable situation when Commander-in-Chief and the Supreme Leader of military forces in Ukraine are sending us different signals. And these signals are 180 degrees different, opposite to each other. And for the person who is not a military professional, who just is emotionally suffering and is listening to both sides, he now has to decide whom to believe, right? And then the next part is what is actually happening. The fact that there are different interpretations and estimations of what was happening on the front cannot not confuse people. That situation needs to be remedied. There should not be a situation when a commander-in-chief says one thing, and then the voice of the Office of the President, the presidential advisors, come out and say, no, he is not right, and that's not what's happening, not even the president. So this should not be happening. Now let's impose over this the firing of the commander of special operations, Kharenko. He was fired, according to his words. He wasn't even aware that he was fired when that happened. And that is not how it's done. First of all, you don't do it like this with generals. You shouldn't be doing that even with privates, but you absolutely don't do that with generals. Also, the commander of special services, special service operations. you should not be making these decisions. So this is a very specific kind of military, and he was supposed to be fired according to the statement by Zaluzhny. And Kharenko says that Zaluzhny has no questions to him, and he never signed this order. Then Minister of Defense Umerov comes out and says that he signed this order. But this is a violation of Ukraine law, by the way, because Minister of Defense is not the one signing these. And we have a question again. Our Supreme Commander cannot come to agreement with Commander-in-Chief about firing the general, and is doing that in a roundabout way with the hand of Minister of Defense, who really has no dog in that fight, and he is using him to achieve his goals, and in process violating the law of Ukraine, which, when it's done by a supreme leader, is actually a rather heavy violation. It's a heavy crime. So the main signal coming out of it is that President and Commander-in-Chief cannot come to an agreement on cadre questions, not even about war, but about people serving under positions. And then we have a publication of Schuster, who is saying, in Time, who is saying that there are many people in the office who disagree with the President, and he confirmed that these are the active advisors in estimating our goals. Where are we fighting? What are we fighting for? But not a single volunteer retirement from the office. So there are people working in the presidential office who do not agree with him, but who do not resign from their positions, right? So I actually left this office twice when I was disagreeing with what's happening and with the future perspectives of development. All right. All these are the signals of a very concerning quality. And finally, aviation. One needs to understand that even if right now we get 60 F-16s to the front, not in small batches by 10 or 5, how it will be likely happening in the next couple of years, but imagine we get a bulk of 60 with one shipment. This will significantly better our situation in one certain spectrum. Army in the modern war is akin to an orchestra. And the fact that 4 or 6 violins are playing really well for the whole orchestra, that's good. The violins are playing well, but will the whole orchestra play better? We are not gathering money doing these fundraisers for UAVs and nails and other things for the front. It's already a fact in itself showing that not everything is good in our kingdom, right? And we find ourselves in a very peculiar situation where Zaluzhny, European Union, and NATO and United States and, Arestovych are saying one thing, and the office of the president and the usual citizen at large are believing something else. And this is my degree of responsibility here, because I created an image of an easy win, easy victory early on, but I'm not running from this responsibility. Yes, I did. I created that partly. I'm guilty to a degree. I was doing that for us to survive at the moment, and now I'm breaking that illusion so we can survive again. The goal is the same, it's the survival of the nation. And we need to do something with that situation when somebody needs to be brought to reality. So speaking of a Ukrainian citizen who is now frustrated, who was promised an easy victory, and now it turns out it's not an easy, and the question, will it be in the format he expects? That's the one I'm taking on my shoulders, and I'm explaining, getting back questions, getting back the kicks, and attacks from different layers of society. That's one thing, that's fine. But then who will be bringing our president to reality? Our partners, our international allies. I was trying to do that when I was there in the office, but I was not much listened to internally. Now they have to listen, right? Now they have to react to the critique. So they are listening a lot more now. And from a side, it's not a good story. It looks like a complete mess when General Command, Commander-in-Chief has one opinion and Supreme Commander has another opinion. So we need to make sure that we find objective answers to what's happening, why is it happening, and what is our strategy to resolve it. And this needs to be coordinated and concerted with the top political leadership of the country. And it would be very nice if we also come to agreement with our partners. And that statement that I'm alone here, the best believer in our victory, that doesn't add tanks, doesn't add mortars, doesn't add Mavics, doesn't add nails, doesn't add people to the front, doesn't add to our economy, doesn't add money to the coffers, to the budget. And faith without actions, without deeds is dead. Let me quote the Bible here. We need more deeds, we need more action. And not the ones that nobody sees, right, somewhere undercover, but the ones that are visible to the soldiers on the front. The criteria of every action that we take should be rather simple. Citizen should get more money in his purse, and soldier on the front should get more material base to make it easier to fight. When the company gets 3 drones, I understand that. That's a good result. When a citizen paid less taxes this year, I would take that as a result too. That's a good KPI. And for now, it's just conversations and attacks on each other without the deeds. All right, let's go through different topics, and I have questions to try to fine-tune some answers that you gave. Let's start with Kharenka. There was a commentary by Господин Shvets, whom I think you know, who you're familiar with. He said that according to the law of national securities, the commanders of certain branches of military are appointed and released from their position by a president of Ukraine, according to the advisory of the minister of the commander-in-chief. And I rechecked that. It actually exists. And okay, if we, for example, say that doesn't exist, if, for example, this norm was abandoned for now, the problem that I see is that commander-in-chief should be informed at least that this position is being replaced. Because what is happening that commander-in-chief was not aware, Kharenka was not aware, and then all of a sudden they both hear that news that one of these generals is fired. That's the legal part. Remember, I said that our commander-in-chief is only mentioned twice in our laws, that us not having enough legal base can only exacerbate the split when it happens between the supreme commander, minister of defense, and commander-in-chief. Do we seriously want them to fall into different disagreements? And I'm just not talking about the substantial disagreements, but just procedural disagreements, right? One cannot fire the commander of a certain branch of military without letting know to the commander-in-chief. And in fact, actually, commander-in-chief should be recommending a yay or nay in this case, not be just an informed person. So it's interesting, because commander-in-chief exists, but he kind of doesn't on the legal face. And this replacement, the firing and the posting of a new person, it once again highlighted the same thesis that was brought up in the Time article that you hinted at, sometimes directly, sometimes not, that president often makes decisions over the head of commander-in-chief. And here, that's another one that highlights that president is coming out and saying, I'm doing that. Yeah, this is what you call a spit in the face. You don't do it like this. This is not according to the administrative, military, or just conscience values. And in order for that to not happen, I think we need better legal base to really highlight what is possible and who is doing what. We don't have that now. We did not have that at the beginning of the war. And it's the 20th month of this war. We still have no legal regulation. On the 20th month of the war, we still are lacking the most important document that delineates the responsibilities of Supreme Commander versus Commander-in-Chief versus Minister of Defense. What strategic advances on the front are we talking about? We're trying to use the computer that doesn't have the operating system installed fully, or operating system is corrupt. Yep, that's a fact. Now, regarding the publication of NBC that you mentioned, publication says that officials of United States and Europe started their talks, negotiations with Ukrainian leadership in October about possible negotiations and non-military solution with Russia. And this is taken from the words of American bureaucrats who are part of these negotiations. And they were discussing, even to the level of details, what Kiev will have to refuse to let go in order to achieve the results in these negotiations. Some of these negotiations happened in October in the same format as Ramstein with ministers of defense, and they started with concerns about the war being a stalemate and concerns about the West being able to supply Ukraine in the needed amounts. So it seems like everything started even a month ago. Ramstein happened early in October, right? As I remember. So I have a question. Did you know that these negotiations were happening? You know, Nikolay, the sky is blue. Okay, I think I can read between the lines. What do you know about who is participating? What is the framework? What is the official reaction of Kiev to that? Let me tell you something slightly different, more important. I did outline it today in my post. Dear friends, understand how painful and hard it is to acknowledge reality, especially when for 15 months we were building the image of brilliant victory, and there were good confirmations of that. Kharkov, Kherson operations, they were fantastic. And how difficult it is now to come to reality. And my part of responsibility is big in that. But I'm as well will tell you that if we will continue the same line as we are doing now, then my statement when I said, remember, we joined NATO and part of the lands remain occupied and we take them later non-militarily, that may be a suggestion that will be above our reach. Because if you look at this article, it doesn't even mention NATO now. NATO is under a big question. Now they're talking about Israel and Korea who have special guarantees. And if we will continue our stubbornness for another half a year, I suspect we won't even have that proposition. We'll be talking again about Minsk 3, Minsk 4, Minsk 5, and the same old format that didn't work before. So we need to understand that in order to survive, we need to come to agreement on this reality. Not because Arestovych said that, but because it is so. In the last stream, you mentioned that we need to become rapidly adequate in regards to this current situation. So on the web, there are a lot of collages now of different pictures and videos of Arestovych of, let's say, 1 year ago with Arestovych of yesterday stream. And that Arestovych from the past, he's making rather sharp statements. Are you guys mad? Exchange peace for territories, that is not thinkable. Do one understand your change of rhetoric back then, but today, that back then you were also in a somewhat disconnected state from reality, and now you're traveling to United States, to our European allies, are actually giving you a better picture of potential conflict between United States and China, that you see that this threat is real, and you see the picture at large. Can I quote you the Commander-in-Chief of Ukraine, Yuriy Zaluzhny? What is he saying in his article? I thought it will be A, and then it turned out to be B. Our calculations with the forces that we had told us that in 4 months we'll reach Crimea. So I did not calculate that specific report for him, but I can calculate as well. And under certain circumstances, we had a good chance to get there. And that's what I was translating, because I was sincerely thinking that. And then when we started to move slow, then there were delays with the Western supplies. Then we started to fight for Bakhmut instead of fighting on the south. We had to form 3 different army corps, and we only managed to make 2. And then we started plucking different detachments from the 2 that we formed to drop under Bakhmut from the south. And then what do you expect? How do we advance on the south? If they have about 100 detachments of a brigade and regiment size on the southern front, and it's fluctuating. There was between 55 to 100, and we wanted to break through. What is an army corps? 2 brigades, 2, 3 brigades. We wanted to break through with just that. So with maybe 10 or 12 brigades, we wanted to break through 50. So at least in that size, we aspired to reach Tokmak, right? So we wasted and lost our time because the West was slow to supply certain elements, and we plucked our troops to the wrong side of the front. And then, while we were slow, the moods on the West changed. They actually looked at the counteroffensive as the exam for Ukraine, our ability to go through that exam and use our resources to fight Russians effectively. And from their point of view, we failed on that. They're not making that statement directly, they're not harsh in making it, but this is what is implied. And then the Chinese problem exacerbated as well. The elections in the United States also flared up. Basically, when the Republicans announced the process to impeach Biden, their political campaigns started to rev up rather quickly. And there are a lot of questions being posed about the moral character of the president and alike. And many other questions are now also getting sharper. And the question of Ukraine is one of the top 3 questions. And all that was growing as a snowball. And there is one simple rule: your actions need to match the circumstances. There were certain actions that we needed to do when we started counteroffensive. Then in August, we had other actions to carry out, now different ones in October, and now in the 4th of November, we should be acting according to the current situation. Situation changed, but there is one deficiency: we are not really changing. Well, we at large, right? Some of us did. For example, I did change the strategy. Commander-in-Chief came out with an article. Our Western allies are mentioning we're doing negotiations. And what is our leadership doing? Our political leadership is continuing the previous course and multiplying the mistakes by doing so. And that causes a serious concern, to say at least. So the topic of bringing us back to adequacy became much more important for us. And the problem of that is not that we cannot draft people in the army. We can. One way or another, we can increase the army. We even have the shells to a degree. Not enough, but we still have them. But the problem that arises is why? What are the goals? And it is rising because the Western allies do not have answers to that same question. They're diminishing the aid to Ukraine, and we're fighting for that, that maybe in December they will vote a big budget and we'll get 60 billions for that, through that. And that's a lot of effort that is exerted on this topic right now. But that letter of Republicans that we looked at with 12 questions, the main red line of this letter is why. Give us the valid strategy. Show us what are we trying to achieve. America has money, America has weapons. We do not have an answer to why. And they don't have an answer to why because we cannot provide them this answer. And now the central question, again, I posted today that a motivated volunteer can say, yeah, we're fighting for Ukraine, for culture, for language. Yeah, we understand. But that's for a motivated volunteer. What about the average guy who is being conscribed from a village, from a town, who didn't want to go fighting, and now he needs to rise from the trench and go under machine guns and the minefields? That answer to why needs to be something that is strong enough to make him go. It needs to motivate him. It needs to motivate the mother of 2 kids who left Ukraine and is living now in Poland, whose kids are now already speaking Polish because they're studying for the 2nd year now at school there. And she is now working in Poland. She found a job and she's trying to settle there. The question, why? What for? How do we answer that question for her? She looks at Ukraine and she sees that our Supreme Commander is in disagreement with Commander-in-Chief about the perspectives of this war and the methods of this war. That affects motivation on the field. That affects the return rate of our citizens. And we are at a very uncomfortable line here, and it's a red line. And it's not because Russia is scary and will attack us. Russia has its own issues. They have to deal with, so they haven't become scarier. But we need to answer these questions. Those 12 questions that Republicans asked us, we should be asking ourselves. And as a closed discussion, closed expert or open expert discussions, however you bring it up, but we needed to bring it up. Datsuk also posted right questions. Sergei Datsuk. Why, on the most important changes of our strategy and necessity to change them, we learn from two messages to the Western partners. Our commander-in-chief posted an article to the Western allies, and our supreme commander, again, is also sending a message to our allies. And we, as people of Ukraine, do not have a right to listen to that? Who turned to Ukrainian people to explain that, right? Let's not point fingers here in this room. But yeah. So it would be normal when commander-in-chief would be telling and supreme commander would be telling these things to the society directly, but not through a message or interview to Western media. And we as a society are learning that at the back end from the Economist magazine, how things are and what is going to happen. I think this is not a good situation. I think something needs to be changed in communication between our powers and the society. For now, I have to carry that on my shoulders. All right. So today we're gathering money for 53rd Mechanized Brigade, which is now in Avdiivka. And that's for 30 Mavic drones. We want to gather 1,900,000 hryvnias. They go directly to the unit's account. And you're providing aid directly to them, and they will confirm in a video format at the end when they get the purchase done. For now, we have about 200,000 gathered already, but please continue. It is very important. Alexei, there is, I think, more space today to discuss not so comfortable questions, but in the context of adequacy and inadequacy. I'm remembering the results of the previous counteroffensive. In Kherson region, I think Milley came out back then with a publication when he said that it's right now the time for Ukraine military political leadership to affirm the successes they achieved at the battlefront, with other means and diplomatic means as well. And everybody, as far as I remember, very sharply rejected his position. What diplomatic solutions is he talking about after these successful counteroffensive milestones? What negotiations can we talk about? I think Milley is missing something. He's close to Sullivan. These people were accused of being even pro-Russian. Here, it was viciously attacked by our society. And even you back then did not have that narrative. Do you regret that back in the time you did not make an accent on his speech so we could start becoming adequate then? No, I do not regret, because at the moment we were still getting a lot of equipment and we were preparing 3 army corps to do a counteroffensive, and it had all chances to be successful. Back then we have not yet pulled a bunch of these newly forming troops to fight under Bakhmut. We had really good chances to achieve something in the south. I'm talking about this, Zaluzhny is talking about this as well. Milley was correct because he was talking about a remote perspective as the commander-in-chief of the American army, and he knows exactly how much can he supply. And he is saying that it's a great way to fix it diplomatically, and in his point of view, in the long range, it was a good time to do that. We were in a strong position. We could push through certain elements upon Russians at the moment. Right now, it's not so. Right, and unless the West really starts some global shipments to us, situation 6 months from now may deteriorate even further. So did we miss the moment? No, I think counteroffensive had to happen, and it did have chances for success. Perhaps not to getting to Crimea, but Takmak and Melitopol should have occurred, and that would be a significant change in our favor. We could have got better cards to play. But the central question that I think we should ask of Milley is, all right, Kherson was liberated in November of 22nd. Counteroffensive started in June of 23. Who gave Russians so much time to dig in? Were it us? We had nothing to advance with? Or there was not enough supplies? Then let's separate the reasons and causes for objective and subjective, and we'll gladly listen to that, because it's a partnership that was worked. And as for attacking Milia being pro-Russian, do you know what is standing behind this accusation that everybody who is speaking the truth is pro-Russian? That basically implies that speaking the truth is being pro-Russian, and then lying implies being Ukrainian, right? That's what these accusers are essentially putting in your logic, if you follow them. So if you're speaking Russian and you're speaking about these difficult things, you're supposedly pro-Russian. Okay, so if you're speaking the truth, you're pro-Russian. If you're speaking lies, you're Ukrainian. I think this is a bad precipice for discussion. President of Ukraine, Zelensky, is considering the possibility of arranging elections during the war times. Kuleba, Minister of Foreign Affairs, made a statement to this regard, and Zelensky is considering an opportunity to do that in spring of the next year, and he is weighing pros and cons for this process. So what do we know? We know that the president is at least concerned with a possible argument about delegitimization, that many parties, including opposition parties in different countries, will get an argument that they were elected, they're supported by their people, and they will likely insist on not providing aid in the right volumes that Ukraine needs. So Ukraine needs to remain legitimate as well. And this is discussion about the presidential elections. Meantime, our parliament, judiciously, legally, is actually out of its mandate for several days already. So if we conduct presidential elections in spring, but we don't do parliament elections in spring, do you think it will change the argument of the different forces on the West about our legitimacy? Yeah, that would imply partial legitimacy. Yeah, you did well, you re-elected your president or elected a new one, but what's up with the parliament? But what's standing there behind the matter of elections is the acting position of the president. If the question posted is, let's re-elect the president, right? We understand that the only thing why is that happening is because presidents want to strengthen his position, and it's easier to gather congressmen under a new party of a president because you can do the parliamentary elections later, right? And then you attract more supporters to presidential side. But is it honest? Is it an honest act when you do the presidential election first and then parliamentary later? What if we do it together? Because if they try to follow suit to do presidential first and parliamentary second, he will likely have an interesting smell of these elections. However, they probably trying to avoid surprises if they do parliamentary elections first or at the time of presidential elections. And Kuleba is also saying that this question is being resolved. There are some insider signals that Central Election Committee is already working. But our society is communicating with a lot of issues. There are inside leaks, there are articles in the Western press. What are our congressmen doing? What are people's deputies doing? It should be sent to the Central Election Committee with a question, what are you doing, right? What journalists are doing? They have to answer. Journalists, in the meantime, are posting articles that they have inside that in Central Election Committee they are doing this and this. Why don't you send an open request? Why our communication turned into some communication of mice under the carpet who are sharing some crumbs under the carpet and talking something, and you can hear some squeaking from under the carpet. Nikolay, you're the professional journalist. Does it look like professional journalism to you? Alexei, everything is journalism, I think. Yeah, everything, official, unofficial. Oh, I agree. But if it's only the work with insiders and leaks, that looks weird, right? I can only imagine in America if the journalists come out and say, according to our insight, Central Election Committee of the United States is now considering certain moves. I could only imagine what would be the public reaction if the communication about the elections will be hidden. Maybe that's the secret, right? That communication needs to be in the open. that we stop being those mice under the carpet, that a commander-in-chief needs to be informed, or rather asked about his advice whether to replace or not the head of a different detachment, a different kind of forces. And now our information field looks ugly because we are commenting on leaks, commenting on insider knowledge, commenting on foreign articles. Is that what we were building on our 2 Maidans and 2 revolutions here? Right? Sometimes it's good to make a step back and to look at ourselves from there. Humanity is strong in communication and cooperation. Our cooperation sucks because our communication is broken. And if you want to say that cooperation is not really broken, then let's take a look at how Kharenko was removed, the head of special services operations, and how positions differ between president and commander-in-chief. And one can say that war marathon is a definite issue too, because it's very one-sided representation of things happening. One can say that, oh, it's oligarchs behind, but no, they're kind of united right now. If you had several channels under different oligarchs, they would be sending at least some degrees of different messages so you could read the truth between them. But right now, it's not so. Many discussion points are forbidden. So what do you think? If we bring back communication to light, at least our issues will then be discussed then. Recent polling said that 70% of Ukrainians now think that it's okay to criticize powers during the times of war. At May of 22nd, there were only 26% who thought it's legit to criticize leadership during the times of Ukraine. See the difference, right? The delta between 26 and 70? That's how much the society is changing. But if the leadership will continue communicating like this, and not just with us, but also with the commander-in-chief, with the commander of special services operations, then you think in probably 4 or 5 months, this percent rate will likely climb to 121%, and that'll be a very different story. So we need to restore normal communication, and that's a good suggestion for all of us. And if we cannot allow for a normal TV streaming, we are facing a difficult situation. Because if the communication is open, we can discuss things, we can find solutions, we can address weak points and pain points, but otherwise we cannot cooperate. And let me look at it from one more angle. If you take a higher framework, modern Ukraine in its current state cannot win over Russia. It can not lose, which is also very important. And when people are saying, did our soldiers die in vain? No, they did not die in vain. They're fighting and still dying for Ukraine to remain as a country. So we remain independent with our culture, with our language, so we don't have Bucha the size of the whole Ukraine. Even if we freeze the war right now, we already made a huge heroic act, regardless of how we treat Russians and how we laugh at their army. This is a huge country with a ton of resources and a very long army. And to stop them, to stop their offensive, this is a legend that will live through ages. Even if we don't, if we stop it at current borders. So the problem is that in our current situation, we cannot kick them to the borders of 91. In order to do that, we need to heighten our efficiency several-fold. Not by percent, not by, certain something, but times. We need to increase our level of communication, cooperation, of economy, and everything starts with communication. Without communication, you cannot cooperate, and you cannot grow, not in times, not grow, period. That's why I'm very seriously talking about us returning the normal broadcasting, that we cancel the TV marathon of war times, and all media get their freedom. Most media treat me rather in attacking fashion. Most of them are saying how bad Arestovych is, but I'm saying that they need to be free. They can attack me even more, but they need to be free to do that. So you rhetorically asked what our people's deputies, what our congressmen are doing. Dubinsky is now being investigated for organizing a scheme Ukrainian Special Investigative Committee delivered him the documents, and now he is being accused of illegal people trafficking across the border. Now he is under sanctions. He was part of the servant of the people, and he is under American sanctions for his connection with Derkach, representative of Russian Federation. And apparently now he is also involved in some schemes for transporting our citizens across the border. So he is facing 7 years in jail if that is proven in court. Right. So that's another good topic, Nikolay. That's a good point, Nikolay, right? There is European Court on Human Rights, so if Ukrainian legal system seem to be somewhat with deficiencies to those who work with it, there is always a European Court for Human Rights and international appeal courts, and we can just wish here for the legal process to be carried out to the best it could be. What else can we say? The complex Grom 2, Thunder 2, is in existence. It's being bettered, it's being developed, and Ukraine already has a missile that had successfully hit targets as far as 700 kilometers. So Thunder 2, Grom 2, is one of the tools that we were building together with Saudi Arabia, right? If they exist and they're actually successful in their use, implementation, why do you think we do not have a conveyor building them here? There's something with the sound here. Hello? Yep, the sound disappeared for a sec. I did not hear you for a sec. It's back now. Okay. Yeah, it's a shame that a country that has Yuzhmash, Southern Machineries, is one of the biggest manufacturers of rockets in the world, doesn't have a tactical weapon based on these rockets. Thunder is an old project. It was invented back in the 90s, but the army was being shrunk and they didn't know how to continue with it, so it was stalled. Then they didn't know how to work with certain missiles treaties between Russia and the European Union. So we worked with Saudi Arabia to try to avoid the limitations of legal fields. And the way we worked with Saudi Arabia, we kind of worked with many others, and with bribes and paybacks and all. So Saudi Arabia broke apart with us eventually. But building missiles that fly for that of a distance is rather difficult. It's not like baking pancakes. We are building them now at the remnants of the constructor genius that were there and the engineering genius. I know roughly what's happening. I cannot say that in the live stream, unfortunately, but I can say that we are trying. We're trying our best. The fact that we cannot be making them at dozens, but that's a sad reality, but there will be some launches. Maybe at some point we'll get up to tens, but not tomorrow. And in any case, I want to congratulate missile troops and engineering troops and artillery, which shared their professional holiday. I think it was the day before yesterday. And 75 to 85% of the success on the front is on their shoulders, because most of equipment, most of the most of the enemy's armies are destroyed by these means. And it also includes bridges, landmines, clearing landmines. Nobody can proceed forward without the minesweepers. Without them, there is no motion forward. And engineering troops, they know a lot of things how to do. Yeah, they can essentially provide the whole system from fortifying to bridges to roads to cleaning and swiping mines. And speaking of these systems, Thunder, Iskander, and the others that can fly 500 kilometers, just having 20 of these complexes in Ukraine with a good stockpile of 400 missiles, it diminishes any probability of war between Russia and Ukraine to almost zero, because the weapon of that range and that might, it changes the character of war. Not a single military base in Russia to Urals, or at least till Moscow, would not be protected from the hits of our missiles, which, as we see by scalps and storm shadows that are hitting Crimea, that are doing a lot of damage in there. and very difficult to intercept. Imagine if we had this full capability on the whole front. Our enemies would have thought 3 times whether to attack us or not. And the responsibility is on the ministers of defense, the heads of the Congress, heads of cabinet of ministers, presidents, and the like. The problem that they dissected the biggest army at the time and also sold it piecemeal and have not created anything new. And now we have to recreate it on blood at the tempo that is possible during the times of war. But this is our equivalent of a nuclear weapon, basically. This is the strongest weapon that can be built here in Ukraine by our own forces. And we need to fund it to the maximum. Whether it's peace or war, doesn't matter. We need to find a way to build them. And we need to make sure we produce 500 to 1,000 missiles for them. And there was not yet a situation in the world when the peace truce was announced and the army capability and readiness was increased. Because usually the capabilities of military go down right from the moment when truce is happening. Because if the truce is happening, then the officers are rewarded, the ones who are ready to not shoot, right? So it's a general gradient for the army in this case. We are facing an experiment now. If this truce, if this negotiation process happens that our partners are talking about, that they're leading us to, we need to become the first country in the world which actually would heighten its military capacity after signing these accords. This is the only factor that will allow us to survive in the future and to make sure that this peace is lasting. And we will not be able to provide, to get any guarantees by international partners until they see that we can defend ourselves. We have a very bad experience that basically tells us peace means piecemeal, selling apart, and destruction of our military. So now we need to learn a lesson from that. And we need to enhance our military capacity to the highest degree we can. And the second round of war is inevitable unless we prepare for that. So however we can, by magic or by force or by economy, we need to make sure we get these technologies up and running. And we need to continue building our potential with our neighbors, with Czechia, with Slovakia, with Poland. And we need to rebuild our Minister of Defense and our army. And we need to have a good cadre politics, and we need to become one of the strongest military in the world, so nobody would want to attack us again, whether Putin dies or not, that we can talk to Russia in a different tone. And it's not an easy task because they will also be investing in their armaments, and we need to win that super race. And if we're talking about politics, that's a serious situation. Right now, we actually are at the trouble of keeping the status quo, but we need to be times better. Everything can still be changed, though. One of the recent news, Netherlands donated 500 million euros for ammo for Ukraine. Minister of Defense of Netherlands made a statement to that effect. Half of that will be spent for artillery shells, another half for ammo for tanks. And I think this news still shows that our allies in EU are still supporting us. They still have desire and decision to help us. Yeah, the statement by German military general was also to the effect that they'll continue supporting us for dozens of years. America is also giving us 135 million for air defense systems and 300 more for training and ammo and everything. So we have not been dumped, no. And it's not like our allies are coming out and say we're not supporting Ukraine anymore. So that's not going to happen. But our problem is that for our inner not readiness, because we're not increasing our partnership qualities and believe in such a quarrel internally instead of advancing to new heights. And that stands when we live on being fed by allies. That basically leads us to, they will not let us die, but we won't be able to win. Zaluzhny is talking about that too. Parity on the front is not advantageous for Ukraine, because Russia is bigger and longer than Ukraine. We need advantage. We need to have an edge on the enemy. We need technological revolution on the battlefront. When we have 50,000 of FPV drones coming to the front every month, which is an achievable number, we can probably make even 100,000, then it would be a different story. And we need to do it faster than Russia is doing it. While Russia is avoiding sanctions, stealing money and all. So I would say, even if we cut our corruption in half, we will be doing better than Russia in terms of manufacturing. So instead of don't shoot, our slogan should be don't steal. And I can give you another slogan. When they say territory, 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 we have a slogan, Ukraine is above all. I don't want to cancel the previous ones. Ukraine, of course, is above all, but people are above all too. Between a yard of a land or a soldier, I will always pick the soldier. People are more important. When you have people, we can take the territory back. When we have no people, we will have no territory. So it's probably time for us friends to start gathering together and communicate and make the right decisions. We're talking about our destiny here. And I would remind our viewers that we are making a fundraiser for 53rd Mechanized Brigade near Avdiivka. You can support the fundraiser in the link at the bottom of the stream. It's monobank directly going to them. And yeah, to comment here, Nikolay, 53rd is fighting on the most difficult part of that front. It depends upon this brigade whether Avdiivka will be encircled or not. This is once again a super important effort to support. These are the guys holding the key position on this front. Every cent that you donate, every hryvnia that you donate is leading to a victory there, possible victory or possible keeping that part of the front standing. General Assembly of United Nations, for the 31st time, sent an appeal to United States to stop sanctions against Cuba. 180 plus countries supported that, all countries of European Union, all our immediate neighbors, while United States and Israel said directly against. And these are two countries that said, no, we're not, and Ukraine was the only country that abstained from voting. So what does it give it to us, this process? Well, look, when Israel has issues, America sends 2 aircraft carriers. That's called coordinated politics. It's called partnership relations between Israel and the United States. They have a lot of problems. Israel wants something that United States, some stuff that United States are not eager to do. United States wants from Israel some stuff that Israel doesn't want to do, but they're still coordinated heavily. And if we want to have 2 aircraft carriers to come to support us, or at least that there would be a threat that there may be 2 carriers to support us, then we need to coordinate our efforts with the United States as well. We're talking a lot about the United States being our best ally, but once again, ally is the one for whom your troops are going to be fighting. Partner is a different element. Partner is the one whom you can support monetarily and with means and everything. So we're now just a partner. And what I've seen in the United States is that Americans, of course, the first problem with the Ukrainian government is corruption. But the main problem is that our current leadership is refusing to see the current situation as the team player, not as Ukraine, but as a team player in a bigger scale. And if you don't want to be a part of a team, then what would be the attitude to you? Well, they won't let you die, right? They won't let you lose completely. But our task is not to not lose. We actually want to win, right? And for that, you need to start internal modernization and need to coordinate our positions with the partners to the degree that they would become actual allies. That big plus here, yes. Last news for today, and it's also good news. Our Air Force hit the factory in Kerch, where they had the newest carrier of caliber missiles. Pilots of our Air Forces hit one of the special vessels of the Black Sea Fleet, and it was a carrier of caliber missiles, and they also destroyed the ship repairs factory Zaliv, where this ship was being docked. So it turns out that even with the means that we have, with those rather modest means that we have in our aviation, we can carry out rather deep strikes on the enemy-occupied territory. Do you think we could maybe push the front further out with these forces? No, Nikolai, this would not be enough. This helps to fight on the ground by taking out certain heavy weaponry carriers and destroying their command outposts and logistics centers. We destroyed a bunch of helicopters with 2 hits of ATACMS, a third of Russian aviation on our territory was destroyed or damaged with just 2 strikes. But yeah, this is only as far as 30, 35 kilometers away from the front line. And it's a soldier who will be winning the war, not a missile. That's why the soldier has to be the center for all the reforms. The soldier has to be center for all the efforts, for all the logistics. We need to create a soldier-centric army, because the soldier who jumped in the trench, into enemy's trench, will be defining whether we take the territory or not. But in order for that, he also needs to get to the trench right first. He needs to be trained, he needs to have enough equipment, he needs to be used in the right place. For that, you need very well-trained sergeants and officers and generals and politicians. And while we are still semi-literate in this regard, and now we are in the biggest event in recent history, we're still learning. And in order to learn, we need to actually try to learn. We need to not stay mum about our experience, but we need to communicate it out and spread it around the best examples. When communication is broken, it's hard to gather more experience. Storm Shadow is great. We can only congratulate our Air Force with that achievement. When F-16s will come, will be more interesting and more effective on the front, but it will be a soldier who will be winning it at the end. So let's do something to make sure it would be effective and good for our soldier to fight. And we continue fundraising for 53rd Brigade. You can find a link at the bottom. Once again, a reminder, these money go directly to the detachment. It is their detachment account. This is a condition number 1, number 2, and number 3. We verify all of your signals, all of your requests to make sure they're legit. Please use our communication channels to send your requests, and we put that in line, and we try to track the process. On this, let's conclude that stream. Thank you, Alexei, for being with us. Yuriy Romanenko was with us in previous stream. Physically, he failed to come today, but we'll find a way for him to come here again on Monday or Tuesday. We'll decide when it will happen. It's related to Alexei's travels overseas. And oh, with all these talks, we forgot to look at the map. Let's do a quick 5-minute look. Let's look at Kherson first. Let's go south to the north. So Kherson region, left bank, we still have tactical areas there that we liberated, and there is a serious risk for our enemy that they become operative level strongholds, and they have rather weak troops there, for which thankfully we still hold them. They could have withdrawn them to fight in other parts, but they still have to hold them here. And it's a serious problem for Russian command. They don't have much fortification. Right bank is higher, our artillery sees further and hits better, and that's a big issue for Russians. Now let's go further. Takmak, and that direction that we kind of forgotten to mention, the fight continues, and our troops still manage, surrounded by all these red diamonds, they still manage to advance. You see how many of Russians are there, but the motion towards southwest still goes, and we continue to work. But there is a risk, protrusion on the right side on the east, that needs to be addressed. And I don't think we can expect a lot of success on this front, but there is a slight hope there still. We'll see. Although, you know, I'm reservedly skeptical about it. There was an attempt by Russian troops to attack Vuhledar several times. Why are they doing it? Because it's the shortest distance to Volnovakha, to a railroad junction. That's Vuhledar over here. And their task is to push our artillery as far as they can from the railroad, because they're building and fortifying their positions there. There's also Velika Novoselovka and Zavetное Желание. The fight continues here, right? It's more to the east. That's where the fight is mostly positional, Staromayorska, Pologi, etc. And now let's take a look at Mariinka. We haven't talked about Mariinka for a while, but they try to move there as well. And that's the whole ideation of Avdiivka and the Eastern Front push. And if you go back to Avdiivka up, if you zoom in here, you can see that the enemy is concentrating efforts for the third large wave. Depends how you count it, but it's the third attempt in the recent activities, and to continue moving from the southern and the northern flanks. And 53rd Brigade is holding one of these key sites, and these UAVs are lives or deaths of our soldiers. So we need to make sure that they have a chance to purchase them. And the situation there is very serious. I would even say very serious for our troops. But while we're fighting, we're still doing some successful strikes. And you can see the arrows, their directions. That's what we're trying to do. They're trying to encircle that to Orlovka, Berdichi, and Taninka, and encircle us this way. Let's go up north. There is continuous fighting near Bakhmut. The fight for railroad, for the Rocade Road, the one that follows the front line. You see our troops push them further out from Klishivka and Andreevka, beyond the railroad, cutting their supply line. And now we're doing the fire control in the area, exercises, so we're limiting their effectivity. Now, really heavy fighting is near Bakhmut. And not to offend other parts of the front and other fighters, but the enemy concentrates main effort is near Avdiivka and near Kupiansk right now as well. You can see Belogorovka, it's rather hot. Silver Forestry is still rather hot, Sebryanskoye Lesnichestvo. And in Kupiansk direction, the enemy conducting serious attempts to move forward. This is another area of their effort. And this is the review of the front for now that we almost forgot to do today, sorry. All right. And was not too serious of a difference front line from what was happening previously, but you know, since it's a war diary, we need to address the front line. We cannot just talk about political themes. All right, that's true. Thank you, Alexei. Thank you, everybody who watched us. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your aid and the fundraiser for our soldiers. Have a quiet night. Goodbye.